No one had ever come back from Jadar space, not with their mind intact, not with their body whole. The Jacquerie were a legend, 7 meters tall, reptilian titans with obsidian horns, armor like scales, and a voice that sounded like thunder being strangled. No species, no federation, no empire had ever made peaceful contact. Until now, because Earth didn't send a fleet. Earth sent her. Ambassador Sarah Voss stood before the airlock of the Terran diplomatic skiff. No guards, no weapons, just her, a small translation node embedded behind her ear, and a data stick with the last known terms of surrender offered to the Jacquerie. It had been melted in front of the last envoy. That envoy never screamed. The Jacquerie had torn him apart in silence. Now they had invited someone. One human. Sarah. She walked into the Jacquerie's flagship, a cathedral of bone and steel orbiting a neutron star. Gravity warped slightly. Light bent in ways her brain didn't like. But she kept walking. 7 Jacquerie waited for her inside. The smallest was 5 meters tall. The one in the center stood nearly 8. They didn't move, didn't blink, just watched. Then one of them leaned forward, smoke curling from its nostrils. You are the offering? Sarah didn't flinch. I am the message. They laughed, the sound like boulders grinding over fire. Most diplomats use flattery. Sarah used facts. The last empire that tried to subdue Earth called themselves invincible. The Jacquerie bared rows of obsidian teeth. They screamed well. Sarah smiled faintly. They were wiped out in 6 days. Silence. She reached into her coat and pulled out a single object. Not a weapon. A bone, deliberately scorched. The Jacquerie leader stiffened. Their general, Sarah said softly, we returned his body, but not this piece. We wanted to make a point. The chamber trembled as one of the dragons stepped forward. His claws were long enough to shred tanks. His breath carried plasma heat. You threaten us with bones? Sarah looked up, meeting the gaze of a creature 20 times her mass. No, she said calmly. I remind you that we bury ours. You eat yours. That makes us very different predators. The room changed. The posturing ended. Now they were listening. Because Earth hadn't come begging. It had sent someone willing to face a monster, without armor, without fear, and without ego. And that terrified them. More than fleets. More than bombs. More than extinction. The Jacquerie didn't accept treaties. They accepted trials. When Sarah didn't flinch in front of the council, they didn't nod. They didn't speak. They simply turned and walked deeper into the hive ship. She followed. The walls narrowed. Light dimmed. Even her neural implant began to glitch. Something in the environment was alive, not organic, not mechanical. Ancient. At the center of the ship lay the Pit of Judgment, a circular chasm glowing with magma and lined with bones from species long gone. Some fossilized, some recent. One still had a boot on it. Terran make. Sarah didn't react. Trial by flesh, said the Jacquerie warlord. You walk the pit. No armor. No tech. If you fall, your bones join the others. And if I survive? Sarah asked. You earn one word. One. Spoken to the sovereign. She nodded. What if I need more than one? The Jacquerie smiled, wide and slow. Then choose your word carefully, human. Sarah stripped off her coat. No weapons. No tricks. Just her, the pit, and the heat. She stepped in. At first, it was like walking into a sauna. Then it was like walking into the sun. The floor sizzled. Her boots melted in seconds. She dropped them, kept walking. Her skin blistered. Her lungs screamed. Her body began to tremble. The dragons watched. She stumbled once. The stone cracked under her foot, but she didn't fall. It took 5 minutes to cross the pit. Only one other being had ever made it. He had died 30 seconds later from internal burns. Sarah didn't collapse. She just stood at the far end, eyes locked with the warlord. One of the younger dragons growled. She's broken. Useless. Why do we even? Sarah raised a single hand, not to stop them, to speak. Her lips cracked as she whispered her word. The chamber fell silent, because the Jacquerie had expected words like peace, honor, or mercy. She didn't choose any of those. She said, pray. The warlord's nostrils flared. What did you say? Sarah's voice came softer this time, dry, scraped raw, but deliberate. You think we came to survive? We didn't. We came to see what's left after the fire. Another dragon leaned forward, scales clicking. You mean to test us? Sarah shook her head. No, we mean to understand if you're even worth fearing anymore. The chamber erupted into roars, some of fury, some of laughter. This human had walked to their sacred pit, survived, and told them to their face, you are the prey now. But none of them moved, because the fire had accepted her. And by Jacquerie law, fire doesn't lie. Later that night, in the silent darkness of her cell, Sarah received a visitor, not a dragon, a child, Jacquerie whelp, barely 3 meters tall. Curious, afraid, awestruck. Why did you say that word? He asked. Sarah didn't speak for a moment. Then, because I needed them to know something we've always known. What? That the strongest don't fear death. They fear irrelevance. The child left. But the next day, a new room opened for Sarah. Not a prison. The throne of sovereignty. The one place no outsider had stood in 4,000 years. The trial was over. Now came the conversation. And she had earned her voice. The throne room of the Jacquerie wasn't made of gold or crystal. It was made of the bones of kings, dragon kings, fallen emperors, warlords eaten by their own challengers. At its center sat the sovereign, 9 meters tall, coiled tail like a wrecking ball, wings furled so wide they brushed the ceiling. Its voice had ended civil wars by accident, and it was silent now, because a human had earned the right to speak. Sarah Voss stood before the sovereign, skin cracked, muscles torn, hair burned, but she was still standing. You crossed a pit of flesh, the sovereign said at last. You did not scream. You did not ask to stop. You survived. Sarah nodded once. You now have voice. Speak your purpose. She didn't ask for peace. She didn't negotiate. She asked a question. Do you even remember the last species that made you bleed? The dragons stirred, not in anger, in memory. They remembered, deep in their instincts. Millennial-old scars buried under pride and legend. They remembered a race that had burned one of their nests of glass. That race had been human. Sarah spoke again, voice low, calm, lethal. You called us prey. You thought we forgot. But we don't forget. We keep records in blood. She walked closer. No, guard stopped her. The last Jacquerie raid on a Terran colony was 70 years ago. You tore apart our settlers. Ate our children. One of the throne guards hissed. Sarah didn't blink. You never understood. That colony was a probe. A test. To see if you were still animals. The sovereign's claws flexed. Are you threatening me? Sarah stepped closer still. No, I'm offering you relevance. A chance to evolve. The sovereign tilted its head. What would humans gain from our survival? Sarah smiled, not with warmth, with precision. If we wipe you out, you become a myth. Another extinct predator. A footnote. But if we let you live, the sovereign rumbled. Sarah's eyes didn't leave his. You become our rivals. Something worth sharpening our claws against. A reason to build better weapons. Stronger minds. You become the fire we train in. The chamber fell still. Not insult. Not fear. Respect. The sovereign let out a long, slow exhale of flame. Not at her, but into the air above her head. A sign. He rose. Then knelt. One knee. One claw over his chest. And the Jacquerie around him followed. Even dragons kneel when they meet something older than fear. Purpose. That day, Sarah Voss didn't win a war. She rewrote one. The Jacquerie were not conquered. They were converted. Not into allies. Not into slaves. But into something far more dangerous. Competitors. Earth didn't want peace. Earth wanted pressure. A galaxy that kept the fire burning. That reminded humans how to survive by outgrowing even monsters. When she returned home, Sarah walked off the landing pad barefoot, burned feet still healing. Crowds waited. Reporters, politicians, admirals. She ignored them all. One general stepped forward. Ambassador Voss. Did they agree to terms? Sarah looked at him and said, they agreed to remember. Now, across every Terran outpost, one phrase is etched into alloy above the command centers. Send soldiers to win. Send fleets to destroy. Send humans to change the rules.